Everybody to the Virtual Howl. Woohoo! It's been too long since we've heard all of you. I'm Natalie Phil, and I direct the Adirondack Center for Writing. We're one of the two partners with the North Country Public Radio who put on the Howl Story Slams. And we are so thrilled. We've missed all your stories for so long. And we're thrilled to have this. The Adirondack Center for Writing, if you are not familiar with us, we do programs for readers, writers, and storytellers throughout the whole region. And damn, do we have a lot of virtual programming. We have a lot of robust programming. So please just check out our website, Adirondack Center for Writing, and all the social medias. Right now, we're doing a really great workshop for teen writers. So it's free. If you know any teenagers that love to write, just reach out to us. It's really, really quite great. And we're doing a lot of programs. We haven't stopped for a second. So please check us out. It's Lizette. Hi. I'm going to occasionally do call outs because I don't have a filter. That's something that we should probably all know. All right. So what I'm going to do before, let me just introduce our co-host. And the co-host is Mitch Teich from North Country Public Radio.
Hey there, everybody. So glad to see everybody in little boxes all around the North Country.
Nice to see you. Okay, so we're going to do this. I'm going to say you're going to say the first rule.
Oh, I'm saying the first rules. That's right.
Yeah.
I am going to suggest, so that everybody has a nice view of our speakers tonight, that you find the setting in the upper right corner of Zoom that allows you to select speaker view. And then that will allow you to see our speaker in full living color and your colleagues in the audience in very tiny boxes along the top. So that for your enjoyment would be the best setting. However, you know Zoom better than we know Zoom. So however you would like to consume tonight's entertainment is just fine with us.
Nice. And the next thing is that because this is on Zoom, it's hard to tell a story to a computer and not get the audience reactions that you're used to, the laughing, the crying, the throwing the tomatoes. And so it would be really great, and feel free to chat your reactions. We obviously can't unmute you because we can't trust you. That's basically the bottom line. But truly, obviously we can't because of all the feedback and everything. But that doesn't mean that you can't react and chat and put things in there, because it really does. It's tough. Or see what Mitch is doing right there. If you can see Mitch, there are reactions on your own little window, which you can access from the bottom toolbar, far right. It says reactions. Those are harder to see if you're telling stories, quite honestly, than the chat, but try them both, just have fun with it. Next rule is Mitch's.
The next rule is the ground rules for our Howl Virtual Story Slam, which are pretty similar to the ground rules for all of our Story Slams, and that is for the speakers tonight. It is a 5-minute limit. We have a way that we have told all of our speakers how we'll let them know when they're approaching that limit. Normally, we have a cowbell that we ring, but that would be really, really intrusive in a Zoom call, so it'll be a secret other way. And if you go much beyond the 5 minutes, then everybody will know. Also, speakers can't use props, and the story must be true, even though we have no way of fact checking you.
All right. And then the last thing is that the judging is going to be a little bit different tonight. We have 6 storytellers, and not including Mitch Teich, who's going to tell the first story, and myself. I'm going to tell the last story of the night. But there are 6 competing storytellers, and tonight we will have 1, maximum 2 winners instead of a first, second, and third place. And those 1 or 2 winners will go on to tell the story in the Grand Slam whenever we can. And when we can have it, it'll be at the town hall in Saranac Lake, where we were trying to have it last month. But one day we will have it, and I think we should all cling and get really excited about that day. I think those are all the same rules. I think we're all done. So what I'm going to do is introduce our first unofficial storyteller today, and that is the fabulous and truly very, very charming Mitch Teich from North Country Public Radio. Yay!
Well, we will see if anybody thinks I'm charming after this story. But first of all, thanks so much to everybody who made it out here tonight. Hope the traffic wasn't too bad going from your kitchen to your living room or wherever you're watching this. And I have a little story. I guess, did we mention, Natalie? We did not mention the theme of tonight's Story Slam. And I should mention that it is holidays, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So people will be talking in the theme of holidays tonight. I just wanted to start tonight's session by saying, your 20s are really the time that you're supposed to kick back and be just a little bit wild. Go out with your friends, do some crazy things that you might regret someday. My 20s were kind of like that, at least if you call getting sick on major holidays a crazy thing that you'll regret someday. The real way this all started was actually well before my 20s, our nation's bicentennial, July 4th, 1976. I was 7 years old. I had just moved to Washington, D.C., so we got to see the fireworks over the Washington Monument, which was pretty exciting when you are 7 years old. More exciting was my first experience with Fritos, a whole bag of Fritos. My most vivid memory of the 200th anniversary of the United States of America was throwing up in the back seat of my parents' gigantic Ford station wagon on the GW Parkway, falling asleep, and then waking up still covered in regurgitated Fritos as we pulled into the driveway an hour later. But the first time I remember this happening in my 20s was over the 4th of July after my junior year of college, when I went to visit my girlfriend in Colorado. Maybe it was altitude sickness. Maybe it was a metaphor for the future of our relationship. I just remember her waterbed was not the most comfortable place to recover from what sickness I encountered. Then there was Thanksgiving, my senior year of college. My roommate invited me to Nebraska, the appropriately named Hickman, Nebraska, to spend Thanksgiving on his uncle's farm. The first night I was there, the night before Thanksgiving, I got food poisoning. So cramps, plenty of barfing, and a Thanksgiving day spent in bed. Fortunately, this one, not a waterbed. A few years later, my girlfriend, this one worked out a little better as we are still married 20 years later, invited me along to see one of her old friends over the holiday break. You can probably guess where this is going. We went out for Mexican food, and a couple of margaritas later, I was barfing all over the side of her car door as we stopped to fill up with gas. In all fairness, I later brought my girlfriend along to dinner with one of my oldest friends. It was her first experience with sushi, and it became her last experience with sushi for about 15 years. But that was not on a national holiday, so it does not figure into our story tonight. But all of these examples pale in comparison to New Year's Eve at my friend William's house, my senior year of college. This is the same friend who we would later go out for sushi with. Anyway, I had come home for the holidays, and he invited me up to spend New Year's in Baltimore in the house that he was renting with 3 or 4 friends. It was not an especially wild evening, not that I remember anyway. The group of us had dinner, played a few games, watched the ball drop, and went to bed not too long after midnight. And that is when I started to feel not well. Really not well. A high fever, a truly nasty headache, body aches, to the degree that I decided I needed to take something, aspirin or Tylenol or Motrin or something. But this was a house occupied by a bunch of 21 and 22-year-olds, and so as I went from bathroom to bathroom, I found it was difficult to take anything. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. The options were limited. I felt like there were about 10 bathrooms, but there were probably just 3. The first 2 medicine cabinets had no medicine of any kind. And then I got to the third one, the one used by the women who occupied the house. And that is where I found the Midol. And the Midol label told me it contained a painkiller, which was what I really wanted. So I took some, probably the maximum dose, probably more than the maximum dose. And I don't really know how Midol is supposed to work for its intended purpose, but I went back to bed and I started to feel really weird. really weird, like the strangest dreams I had ever had. Fever dreams with just a little bit of Midol thrown in for additional amusement. It was a bizarre way to ring in 1992. I woke up the next morning. I was feeling a little better, but still not my best. And my friends offered to let me spend the day there and another night until I felt even better. But I decided I really needed to get home because, after all, I was totally sick of the holidays. And thank you very much. And with that, thank you for indulging me. I am going to turn things over to our first speaker of the evening. You see, I'm going to admit somebody from the waiting room. I'm going to turn things over to our first speaker of the evening, who is a very accomplished speaker in the Howl Story Slams. In fact, he won the last in-person Howl Grand Slam that we held at St. Lawrence University back in 2019. Please welcome, hailing from Canton, New York, Aaron Todd. Woo!
Thank you very much. I don't think that I know anybody who loves Christmas more than my mother does, and that manifests itself in a lot of ways. My mom has the most meticulously decorated Christmas tree that you've ever seen. Every inch is planned. It is just a gorgeous, it's a thing of beauty. And, it's something that she takes a lot of pride in. And when my parents were first married and times were tight, they didn't have a lot of money to spend on fancy ornaments. So my mother took matters into her own hands. She created Christmas ornaments out of cardboard, tinfoil, and made hand-painted tinfoil Santas that have survived to this day, 40 years later. In fact, when we were kids, it was like the honor was to like put the tinfoil Santa on the tree. We all looked forward to that. And one of the best presents that I've received in my adult life was a box of 5 of these tinfoil Santas that my mother had given to me and to my 2 brothers that we could bring home and put on our own trees with our own families. She was always finding a way to introduce the wonder of Christmas into every small moment. I remember looking at the nativity scene, and my mom never really used coal in the stocking as a way to bribe us with good behavior. Instead, she said, if you behave today, you can take a pinch of straw and add it to the nativity scene, and then it will be ready for baby Jesus's arrival. I'll tell you, that's parental bribery at its finest. And it worked like a charm, at least for me, maybe not for my brothers. But, we had a lot of really well-established Christmas traditions, especially on Christmas Eve. My maternal grandmother, Grandma Brown, would come over. She was living alone at this point, and she would spend the night with us. And she's like the patron saint of Catholic grandmas. I mean, she's just like, the quintessential, Catholic grandma. And so Christmas meant so much to her. So it meant so much to us to have her with us. We'd have a delicious dinner. Then we would go watch It's a Wonderful Life and Leo Biscaglia's stories of Christmas love. And then at 11:30 at night, we'd get dressed to the nines and go to midnight mass. And I remember doing that even as a very, very small child. I think of it now, and I have 3 children of my own, and I can't imagine taking children that were, the age that I was to midnight mass, and it's just kind of madness. But I look back at those services, and they were so special, and so the hushed tone, the candlelight, lo how a rose ere blooming, the music, and I can remember dozing off on my father's shoulder and feeling like I'd never felt so safe and warm and loved in those moments. Well, every year on Christmas Eve, we would pack up the car to get ready to go to midnight mass. And my father was always the last one to get in the car. We would be in the car for 5 or 10 minutes. And my father was never the last to be ready. He was always ready before everyone else. So I just remember sitting and waiting for him to get in the car. And then we would get home from midnight mass, and miraculously, I don't know how he knew, but Santa always knew that we went to midnight mass, and he would come to our house between when we left for midnight mass and when we came home. Well, one year I was about 8 or 9, and we got home, and the weather was like it is now, clear, cold, and my parents live out in the country, and you could see thousands of stars in the night sky. And we got out of the car, And suddenly I could hear sleigh bells. And I looked on the ground and there were hoof prints in the snow. And I couldn't believe it. Santa was literally just here. We went in the house and the presents were there and we ripped them all open like maniacs. It's 3 in the morning, we're awake until 3 in the morning. And it was just such a special moment. Well, it just so happens that my father, who's a hunter, had killed a deer earlier that year. And I think he might have saved one of the hooves. And we had a neighbor across the road who was a high school aged girl who might have been willing to make some sound effects for $10 at 1 o'clock in the morning. My perspective on that night has changed a lot over the years, but you can't tell me that it wasn't magic. I can tell you, I can't remember a single thing that I received when I opened those presents on Christmas Eve. But I looked up in the night sky and I still remember seeing Santa's sleigh and the stars. So I feel so lucky to have a mother and a father that would do things like that. And there's really, no matter how old you are, there's always magic in Christmas.
That was beautiful. Thank you. It's actually really lovely to see all the hands clapping and to also know that your whole family is watching too, which is really lovely. And I'm assuming your mom's in there maybe. Thank you so much. Our next storyteller is Ginger Kuenzel.
Sorry, I thought you were going to unmute me. Okay. Hi, everybody. Merry Christmas, and thank you all for coming. So my story is actually told from the perspective of a mother with her children. And I happened to be living in Germany when my children were very small because I was married to a German. And I was a little disappointed in the German Christmases. Although they're beautiful, they're very, very somber. It's sort of the silent night, holy night, and everything is just really quiet and peaceful. And so I was thinking, oh, how am I going to make this really fun for my kids? Well, it turns out that actually there is kind of a Santa Claus over there. Now, he's not the same as our Santa Claus, who's, this jolly old guy who's pretty rotund, comes down the chimney on Christmas night and everything. He's probably pretty rotund because the kids are giving him cookies all the time. And in Germany, they don't put out cookies for their Santa Claus, who they call Saint Nicholas. And he actually comes on December 6th. So we were always told as kids that Santa had to go the whole way around the world on one night and get to all the kids, which I thought was amazing. Well, it's not actually true because he actually comes to Germany on the 6th. And how do we know that he's not going to other countries on other days? So on the 6th of December, sometimes the people will have waiting for Nicolaus parties. And when my kids were very small, we were invited to a neighbor's house to wait for St. Nicholas. So we got there, it was getting dark, and there were probably about 10 or 12 kids under the age of 5. And they were so wired waiting for St. Nicholas to show up. The parents were not all that wired. They were more into the Glühwein, which is hot mulled wine. And so they were pretty chill. But every now and then the hostess would say, this is enough with these kids running around. And she would stand up and say, shh, everybody be quiet. I think I heard a knock on the door. And she would go to the door and all the children would follow her over to the door. She'd open the door and look outside and nope, I guess I was hearing things. Well, she did this a couple of times. And on the third time, again, shh, I heard a knock. The children were really quiet. They all go to the door. She opens the door and there is this really tall St. Nicholas because he's a bishop and he not only is tall, but he has a bishop's hat, which is really tall. So this really tall guy comes in and he's got a staff and he's got this big golden book. So she ushers him over to a chair, the hostess. He sits down, all the children sit down at his feet. And he opens his book and he starts with the first child who he calls to come up to him. And he reads from his book that this child, all the good things he's done that year, but there's one thing maybe that he could do a little bit better in the next year, like maybe don't tease your sister so much. Anyway, he did this for every single child. And these kids were so amazed that Nicolaus knew everything about them. So when he got all done, he said to the children, does anybody here know why we celebrate Christmas? Anything about the first Christmas? So one of the older boys stands up and he says, I know. And he proceeds to tell the story about how Mary and Joseph were on a trip and they checked into a hotel, but the hotel owner noticed that she was probably going to have a baby that night. So he said, well, I am afraid you might wake up the other guests with the baby crying. So I'm going to put you out in the stable, if that's okay. Well, that was, Nicolaus had a hard time keeping a straight face on that one. But so there are a lot of different traditions in Germany and from the US. And our family has kind of melded both of them together because we have one son living in Germany, still in Munich, and one son living in this country who has children of his own. But there is one tradition that we will never do, that the Germans do, and that is to put lit candles on their Christmas tree, on a live Christmas tree, because I think that could definitely result in the good, the bad, and the ugly if we did that. So Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yay. Thank you so much, Ginger. Oh, Mitch, you're the one.
Yeah, but you can thank her too. Oh, thank you so much. And as I look at the Christmas tree sitting in our living room right now, I am glad it is not on fire. Next on our speakers list, I believe, if I'm correct, we have JohannahSpero, and Joanna's next. Could you tell us where are you joining us from?
I'm in Queensbury.
All right. Well, welcome.
Thank you. Well, I'm not sure if my story is good, bad, or ugly, but it certainly is unusual. It was 1993. I was in college and I was in a Christmas play. Now that in itself is not unusual. I was a theater kid after all. However, this play took place in a different country, 100% in a foreign language, while I was studying abroad in Russia. I had been studying there since September. Before then, I hadn't known the language at all. And I took classes with a small group of students. And my friend Patty, who was taking classes with me, one Sunday took me with her to a church service at a missionary church in the city. Now, at the service, they made an announcement saying that they were going to be putting on a Christmas play. And Patty, knowing I had theater experience, volunteered me to audition. Thanks, Patty. Well, I went along with it because I thought, well, surely, they know, I can buy a banana and a loaf of bread and maybe talk about the weather, but I certainly can't talk about the Christmas spirit with any kind of fluency. So I went along with it thinking they were just going to put me up as window dressing. But these church leaders didn't speak a lick of Russian. So they saw me and they said, oh, you're bilingual, perfect. And they gave me a leading role. I was Joyplus the angel, and I had lines, lots of them. Every other one of my castmates, Russian, native. I'll never forget the first rehearsal. The director called us all over and made all these announcements and gave us instructions, speaking English really fast. And at one point, this tall, dark, and handsome castmate turns to me and says, "Poнимаешь?" which means, "Do you understand?" And I thought, oh my gosh, they don't know I'm American? They think I'm like one of them? This was very exciting to me because at the time, I had been basically an outsider for months. So here I was finally feeling included. So this was great. I thought, oh, I'm not gonna burst this bubble. I'm not gonna ruin this. So to answer his question, I just went, I understand. But I had lines, lots of them. And to keep up the facade, I brought my script to my tutors, my Russian tutors, and I said, I need to be able to speak these lines perfectly. My accent needs to be impeccable. I need to deliver these as if I'm a native speaker. And they said, okay. So I practiced and practiced and practiced. Every time I said a line, I would ask my tutor, I say, did I say it right? And they'd go, yeah, with this smile. I said, well, wait, was my accent perfect? there would be, yep. Like, oh, isn't she cute? Turns out mastering the Russian language is extremely difficult. Case in point, my very first line was one word. The word in English, prophecy. The word in Russian, prorochestvo. And I didn't have to just say this line. I had to call it out and throw my fist in the air. Prorochestvo. So I practiced and practiced and practiced. I mean, my tongue was numb from rolling my R's so much. So the very first night, or that first rehearsal, I said my practiced line, my very first line, prorochestvo, and something happened behind me. I heard snickers and giggles and gasps and hands clasping over mouths. I turned around and I saw shocked faces, including the tall, dark, and handsome Pony Maish guy who was so nice to me in the beginning. I said the rest of my lines in a costume of red mortification. But as we all know, the show must go on. So I practiced some more. And when it came time for the performance, my parents were in the audience, my brother was in the audience, my tutors were in the audience, my friend Patty was in the audience, and I nailed it. Prorochestvo! Joypliss takes her bow to thunderous applause. And as we exited the stage, me and my Russian castmates, tall, dark, and handsome Pony Maish guy turns to me and says, "Melodiets." And I understood what that word meant perfectly. Good job.
Yay! Thank you so much, Joanna. You know, I studied Russian in the 80s, and the first word I learned was stroitelnitsa, which is construction worker, which is so Russian 80s.
That's awesome. It comes in handy.
Never once used that word particularly, but it was very, very, before before perestroika. All right. Our next, and hopefully Bailey is unmuting Derrick right now. Our next person, our next storyteller is Derrick Conway, who has been a Grand Slam contestant, I think 3 times, maybe 4. So you're in good hands with this fantastic storyteller. Take it away, Derrick.
Yeah, as part of that, who do I have to pay to actually win one of those? I mean, I'd like to, get a winner on one of them. I've been in a bunch and I just can't win them. I want to know who to bribe. Sorry. I don't mean to be rude, but if I have to take a drink during this, I may. I had an endoscopy today and my voice is a little rough. So anyways, let's get to the story. My story is about the theme of the empty nest. Now, as a single guy, I don't have any children of my own, and I've seen this in movies, and I've heard people talk about it, the empty nest syndrome and missing kids. And I think, most of my life I've thought, how do you miss your kids? I mean, they're pretty annoying. They're little, they're like short, drunk adults or something. But anyways, about 12 years ago, my girlfriend's daughter married a gentleman and he had 2 little kids, and we adopted them, sort of, grandchildren. It doesn't matter how we got them. And so we did all our holidays with them. And in the beginning, it was like, oh my God, can't we just, on Halloween, can't we just draw on the pumpkins? Do we have to cut them all open and everything? But no, it was so much fun because the very first year, my grandson, Gage, he was a little bit of a clean freak at the time. And every time he would scoop in his pumpkin, he would have to get up and wash his hands at the sink. So it would be scoop, wash his hands, come back, scoop, wash. It took a while for him to clean that pumpkin out. After a while, it started when he would get up to the sink, I would dig furiously in the pumpkin to try and get more out so we wouldn't be there all night. But so then every holiday, there was, the ritual. Easter was, we started an Easter egg hunt, and my girlfriend Jen and I would get up, be up all night and putting candies and little eggs. And then I would go out first thing in the morning and hide them in the yard. And we have neighbors 2 houses over that their children were the same age as ours. Their girl was the same age as my grandson, and their boy the same age as my granddaughter. So we had the 4 of them, and we had all the yards here to hide the eggs. And, you know, it was just this ritual. And Christmas had come, and again, Gage was the star of these things. When he was, geez, I don't know, maybe 6 years old, all he wanted for Christmas was a vacuum cleaner. And I don't know, I'm sure some of you have kids and the crazy things they ask for. When he opened that vacuum cleaner, it was as if, you know, we gave him, I don't even know. It was the most amazing thing. He was so happy. He had to use it right away. He didn't want to open the rest of his gifts or anything. And I think the following year, it was a garbage can for his room. So as you can see, the theme of being a clean kid has gone on through his childhood. But as I said, the empty nest, they've gotten older, and now they're teenagers. And as any of you with children know, once they get to be 13, they realize how stupid we are and we don't know anything. And they go in their room and they don't come out till they're 18. So they're not here as much anymore. They're doing their own things and with their friends and stuff. So I just am amazed at how much I miss all the annoying things of the holidays, the getting all the presents and wrapping them and doing the Easter egg hunt and all these things. We would go on sleigh rides and go to the park and freeze while they went up and saw Santa and all. And you think when you're doing it, you're like, oh my God, there's got to be something better. But then when you don't have it, it's amazing how much you miss it. You know, once it's gone. And now I truly, truly understand the concept of the empty nest. And I really feel for my friends. I see them post on Facebook and things of how all their children are grown and moved out. And I feel so sad for them now because I finally understand it. You know, you really don't know what you have till it's gone. And that's my story.
Yay!
Thank you.
Thank
The good, the bad, and the melancholy, I think. Wonderful story. And Natalie and I are still talking about the appropriate bribe. Oh, we've got you muted, but how does he have to bribe us?
Chocolate, diamonds, of course. Any kind of jewel. Should be obvious.
So next on our program, we've had 4 amazing speakers and also me. We are pleased to welcome Linda McKenney, who I am not sure where she is joining us from, but Linda, tell us where you're joining us from. You have an entertaining background, I believe.
Yeah. Danforth.
Great. Well,
I'm
welcome.
the fringe of the Adirondacks.
We are thrilled to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you. So how many of you know how Christmas trees went from plain to glittery? When I was a child, we had tinsel on our Christmas tree to make it all shiny. And my father would supervise to make sure that we laid the tinsel one strand at a time. Now, if you've ever had to do that job, you know how boring it is. And so I moved to the back part of the tree and started laying the tinsel 3 strands at a time. After all, it's the ugly side of the tree, right? It's up against the wall. Unfortunately, one of my siblings snitched on me and I had to do my tinsel all over again. Tinsel's been around a long time. It was used to enhance those candles that Ginger talked about. But thank God now we use lights. Christmas is all about illumination. And there are people like Clark Griswold that likes to illuminate the outside of his house to a great degree. But back to the trees. How did trees move from plain to glittery? And what does it have to do with my family? Well, this is the true story of how Christmas trees got their glitter. Many, many years ago, my great-great-great-grandmother, who was a poor widow, lived with her children in a one-room ramshackled hut with a dirt floor, which she was actually grateful for because she never had to wash the floor. The hut was in the middle of an ancient forest, and it was surrounded by a squadron of very tall pine trees. When the children would fall peacefully asleep at night, they would listen to the screeching sounds of the pine trees as they swayed in the wind. I've listened to trees, and trust me, they do have quite a bit to say. Those trees were also a source of food for the family, especially when they couldn't garden anymore. So in the winter, my great-great-great-grandmother would make our famous family recipe, pine cone soup. One day, one of the youngest children decided to bury a pine cone inside the house so they would have a source of food and not have to go out into the cold. Because the forest was not only ancient, but magical, that tree started growing right away. I also think it had something to do with the optimism of a small child. The other children were very excited about having a house tree. And when December rolled around, they realized that they had a live Christmas tree right inside their home. And while they were grateful for it, they were also a little disappointed because the tree was very plain. So on Christmas Eve, they sat around the tree and imagined possible decorations. They held hands and they said a prayer, and then they went to sleep with beautiful mind pictures of glittering trees. Now, you cannot live in a hut and not have spiders. And because the forest was magical, the spiders were magical as well. They could see the dreams of the children, and they decided that they did not want to leave the tree bare. So they had a web conference, and they began spinning up and down and all around that tree, laying down elegant and delicate and magical webs. The next morning, when the children awakened, they couldn't believe their eyes. Their cries of joy wakened their mother, and she was amazed when she looked at that tree. You see, the sun had crept into the hut, and it not only came through the windows, it came through all the nooks and crannies in the wall. And the rays of the sun transformed that tree into silver and gold. That tree glistened, and it was a magically sparkling tree, way beyond what anyone could have imagined. That Christmas, my family was gifted with the idea of possibility, a Christmas story we still share, and the invention of tinsel, which plagued me as a child. All right. The tinsel part is not true, but the rest of the story is.
Yay. Thank you so much, Linda. That was wonderful. Okay, so our last official storyteller of the night is Tanya Roy. She is also, were you in 3 Grand Slams, Tanya?
Yes, 3.
3 Grand Slams as well. So we're ending the night. Before I tell the last story of the night, you are in excellent hands with one of my favorite storytellers, Tanya Roy. Yay.
So my Christmas story starts much like any other Christmas story with an unplanned, impromptu, and overly expensive purchase. My children are grown now, but the year that they were 4 and 7, I got an email in November that the Rockettes tickets would be going on sale as a special Black Friday sale. And I always had this picture in my head that I would take my children to New York City for Christmas. We would see the Rockettes, we would skate at Rockefeller Center, and it would be wonderful. So without too much thought, my best friend and I decided that we would buy the tickets and take my kids to New York City in December that year. Because I had this picture in my head, I saw my children in these wool plaid dresses with matching hats and mittens and wool tights and their little boots. And so I started scouring thrift stores to see if I could find the dresses, which I did. However, I forgot that children and wool don't really go together. And so on the day of the trip, I dressed my girls and loaded them into the car. The weather was beautiful. And the only problem was that my 7-year-old sat in the back itching and complaining about the wool dress. So we're driving on 90 toward New York City. And all of a sudden, with the complaining in the back seat, I hear this kind of choking, watery sound. And after a few seconds, it is joined by a cacophony of crying and screams. And if you haven't figured out already, when I looked in the rearview mirror, my 4-year-old was vomiting all over herself from what we would eventually discover was horrible car sickness that she is plagued with till this day. So I pull over on the side of the road. It's I-90, it's snowed, cars are going by, the slush is splashing, and I go to take her out of the car seat. And if you've ever had a child's coat, one of those easy to clean coats, you know, they're very slippery. And so I go to take her out of the car seat, and this was a particularly slimy form of vomit. And so it just kind of slid down the front of her jacket, down onto the dress, and onto the car seat. Because she was 4, we didn't carry a diaper bag anymore, which in hindsight was a terrible idea. And so we scoured the car and we came up with 2 things that we thought could help. A handful of fast food napkins shoved in the glove compartment and a can of leftover carpet cleaner. So we cleaned off the front of her coat with the napkins, which worked pretty well. And then we took the coat off her, and my best friend held her on the side of the road, kind of like this. And I covered her face and sprayed her with the carpet cleaner. And the can had one of those like scrubby heads. So that worked really well. As far as the car seat, if you're ever driving down I-90 toward the east and you see a car seat on the side of the road, just leave it there because I guarantee it probably smells really bad by now. So we get to New York and we see the Rockettes, and it is magical. My children watching it snow indoors is one of their favorite holiday memories. And me getting to watch my children watch it snow indoors will always be one of my favorite holiday memories. So we leave the Rockettes and we go to get the skates out of the car in the parking garage. And I say to my children, stand right here and behave. I'm just going to get the skates out of the trunk of the car, which of course they did not. And so my 7-year-old tortures my 4-year-old, and the 4-year-old runs away and trips in this concrete parking garage over a concrete curb. And now there's screaming and crying and blood. So we clean up the blood with the napkins in some spit. And the cut's not too bad. It's just her teeth through her lip. So we go to skate at Rockefeller Center, and I really wanted a picture. And so I keep slapping my daughter's hand as she's itching the dress because I wanted a picture. And I got a picture, but it was not a picture that I could use for my Christmas card. Because while my children are in their beautiful dresses in front of the Rockefeller Center tree with the snow, which is good, my other daughter has her hand down her tights scratching, which is bad. And my daughter's lip had started to bleed, and she had smeared it with her fist, and her lip was swollen to the point where it was endangering her ability to breathe through her nose. So I have a picture. It is both good and bad and ugly. Thank you.
That was amazing. Oh, that was so great.
Oh, that was, yeah, exactly. You know, it's
I wish
that's
we
what,
could see the picture.
yeah, we call that an internal Christmas card, not for distribution. Well, that is the last of our official speakers for this evening's Howl. Our judges in Zoom Judge Land are going to be conferring to choose the best of our 6 speakers The winner, or potentially two winners, will go on to the next Howl Grand Slam whenever and wherever that will be. I think wherever that will be is Saranac Lake. But in the meantime, I am delighted to introduce one final storyteller for this evening, who is going to take on the good, the bad, and the ugly of holidays. Please welcome Natalie Thill.
Hey, thank you so much. What a great night. We were really excited about this theme. You know, it's hard to come up with themes. And when we locked on this one, I just knew there were going to be great stories, and you guys all really delivered. It was just a really great night. So I went to graduate school in Ankara, Turkey, because it was free. I also did study Anatolian archaeology, but when I showed up in Ankara, all fresh-faced and optimistic, I was informed that although, yes, they did cover my tuition completely, and they did give me a dorm to stay in for free, that my full package did not indeed include food. Somehow I missed that in the fine print. And this was a huge problem because I had no money. I had spent it all to get to Turkey, and I wasn't allowed to work. They were really, really strict on work visas there. And the college was just kind of like, you should have paid more attention. You know, this was not their problem. This was my problem. And it was a huge problem. I didn't get enough to eat ever. I found some babysitting jobs. I babysit some of the professors' kids, but it was never enough. I was always hungry, and it was really awful. I lost more weight than I knew I could lose. And there were problems with the department, and it was a hard time, guys. It was really pretty awful. And then as winter came, things did not improve. Winter in Ankara is gray and cold, and Turkey is a Muslim country. So no Christmas decorations, no holiday carols, nothing. And as you may see, I love Christmas decorations. I didn't realize how much I leaned on, especially Christmas lights, to kind of get me through those long, dark December nights, until there were none. So one day, there I am on Christmas Eve. And I had a bunch of exams the next day, because why not? December 25th is just another day. And it's Christmas Eve, and I am in the grossest cafeteria because the food is 20 cents less than it is in the other cafeterias. And it's dingy, and there's fluorescent lights. And I just eaten the only thing I could afford, and it was gross. And I'm walking across the cafeteria to bring my dirty plate. And Turks only listen to Turkish music, and they listen to it very loud all the time, everywhere. So when you hear an American song, it's really rare. And in fact, I have these really vivid memories of every time I heard an American song when I was in Turkey. And this time I'm walking and I hear Judy Garland's "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," which was crazy because they had never even whispered the word Christmas this whole time. And I was fragile and feeling very sorry for myself. So there was just something about her voice and that word, little Christmas. It devastated me. I sobbed right there in the cafeteria, like ugly crying, like just like, like cried. And I cried all the way home to my dorm room, cried myself to sleep. And then I got up on Christmas morning and I went to take my exams and tried very hard not to think of my family all together celebrating the holiday. And I just got through the day. And then a week later, on January 1st, two of my Turkish classmates, women that I'd actually never spoken to before outside of class, they come running up to me and they're all flushed and they said, "We wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas." And they were so proud of, you know, overcoming cultural and religious boundaries, that I didn't have the heart to tell them that, you know, they were wrong. They were so wrong. But they kept going. They're like, we know this is a very sacred day for you, and we didn't want you to be alone. So please let us take you out to dinner at a Turkish restaurant. And of course I said yes, because food. But also it was the first time I had done anything social the whole time, the whole semester. I hadn't done a thing. I had just tried to find food and done my homework. It was a colorless, bleak existence. I was actually kind of shy to go. I was like this recluse, like coming out of the woods. And I find the restaurant in this charming part of Ankara, and I open the door. And talk about Judy Garland. It was like that scene in Wizard of Oz when the world goes from black and white to Technicolor. The place was warm and colorful, and everyone was sitting at these long tables, sitting together and eating. And there's this band playing live traditional Turkish music, and the food was amazing. And everyone was singing along with the songs. And we even noticed that the table next to us, it's like, wow, these sound kind of good. And it turns out they were the Ankara Opera. And they were just having dinner together, getting scandalously drunk, I have to say, on rache, which is this alcohol, this liquor that tastes like anise flavored gasoline. So if that sounds good to you, Tanya and Derrick, that's your drink, because it's repulsive. But they're all there blurry-eyed and with their arms around each other, and everyone's singing and joyful. And every single person that found out I was American, they hugged me and they wished me a Merry Christmas. And without question, that was the merriest New Year's Day Christmas I have ever had. Yay. All right.
And I was just saying that that drink is actually tonight's first prize, is it not?
Oh, yeah. Tanya and Derrick, you can't guys possibly like that stuff. It's okay. Anyway, it's very, very, very disgusting. Yes, and someone hugged me. Do you remember back in the day when like people could hug? I know, that's a sad thing. All right, I have the winner of tonight's. The judges have texted me, and they said, although they loved all of the stories, the winner of tonight's Grand Slam, I feel like the Great British Baking Show. Can you guys, like, can we cue like the violin, like?
Right, but,
like
but we're supposed to have them all lined up on stools, though, looking sheepish.
Yeah, all looking like really intense. And I was like, I have the wonderful job of announcing tonight's winner, who will be going on to the Grand Slam whenever we can all be together and hug each other indiscriminately. The winner tonight is Tanya Roy.
Hey.
Yay.
I'd just like to say she does
Tanya.
barf stories much better than I do.
It was a lot of diarrhea and barf tonight.
Yeah,
So who would have guessed that?
Like you told the story and I'm like, oh, there's vomit in my story. And then the next story about children. And I'm like, oh, there's children in my story. But the holidays, we all talk about the same things, like, right? They all revolve around the same things. Yeah, my grandfather was Syrian. Natalie, that's why we drink that with the coffee bean in it. And then you're supposed to eat the espresso bean.
Okay.
I
The
don't know
espresso bean was not part of
That
it. But,
sounds like the grossest part.
yeah.
So, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yay! Well, we want to thank all of you guys for coming. There's so many people here, and it was really exciting. We weren't sure how it was going to go, but I want to thank all the storytellers. And you did it like pros. It's not easy to do this, but I think we're all getting kind of used to Zoom in a way. You know, you're getting used to just counting. Mitch, you want to say anything to close us out?
Yeah, I want to thank all the audience members that turned out tonight, and hopefully got a good sense for how this works, so that the next time we do one of these, and I think there will be another Virtual Howl in the weeks and months to come, we'll have you sign up to be a storyteller. It's not so hard, and you're doing it. You could be doing it while you're wearing your pajama pants. which is something that we don't necessarily encourage people to do when we do in-person howls. But yeah, it was a great crowd. I counted 65 individual connections, and there were multiple people on some of them. So we probably had close to 100 people tonight. It was a delightful event. And yeah, we're so fortunate to have the support of so many people who love live storytelling. So
Thanks,
yeah.
everybody.
With that, yeah, thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderfully Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, stay well, mask up, and come back and see us again in 2021.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
Now we see the sad view of everybody disappearing off the screens.
I know.
I need some of Linda's magical spiders to make those diamonds for you guys. I'll get them somehow.
Natalie, Bailey, Mitch, are we good? We're good, right? I just hang out till the Grand Slam. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think we might have some special swag that we can send your way. So if we have your contact information someplace, we will get it in the mail.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations.
We don't know when it'll be, Tanya, of course.
That's okay. It's the fun is getting there.
Yeah.
My Radio Bob mug is my all-time favorite mug. We actually received it on the day that we closed on our house. So.
Oh, nice.
Well, that's exciting.
I was drinking from my
Congratulations.
Radio Bob pint glass tonight.
Because all through 2020, we keep looking at each other and saying, you know what Radio Bob says? It's all gonna be all right.
Soon.
Hi, guys.
Aaron, fantastic story. Derrick, fantastic story.
Thank
Where's
you.
Lucy? We wanted to hear Lucy tell a story.